I'm on my way to find a chemist friend of mine who lives in the mountains.
Your call has been forwarded to an automated voice messaging system.
He was in prison for synthesis of MDMA, and I like him because he's a truly brilliant chemist. He published his work in scientific journals, he synthesized novel compounds, he corresponded with academic researchers. So he was doing all sorts of things that are unheard of in a clandestine lab. And for that reason, he belongs to a small subset of clandestine chemists who I consider true scientists. Hi, Steve, this is Hamilton. I'm actually outside what I believe is your property. So I'm going to his house, more or less unannounced. I haven't spoken with him in months. He doesn't pick up the phone, he doesn't respond to emails, doesn't respond to Facebook messages, doesn't want any visitors, but I'm hoping that he'll change his mind when I arrive. This land is somewhat intentionally difficult to find. I don't know exactly where we're going. I've been here before, but it was in 2013, years ago. But during that time, he was sort of on the verge of some kind of a breakdown. He offered me the opportunity to take a look at his lab, but we were chased away by a one-handed man on methamphetamine, and I never got to see it. And he left me at an airstrip in Arcata. This is a long story. I can't tell it all here. I could tell it all here, of course. But maybe we should just go to Steve Gill's. Could that be it? Someone's in that shed. Excuse me.
Holy shit.
Good to see you. I'll give you a
Tracked me down
hug.
like a dog. You found me in my lair. Oh my God. Oh, Jesus. Oh, well, here we are.
Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. So, what's going on here?
I brought a film crew with me because I wanted to interview you. Is that okay?
Well, you're here, so I guess so. Idiocy we go through every fucking day. Keys disappear and then they reappear. It's like, you know, it's like they play hide and seek. And it's just ridiculous. It's just stupidity. And it just drives me absolutely wild.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. So am I actually live now? Am I being recorded or?
You're being recorded.
Okay. Anything I say can and will be used against me, either in a court of law or a court of my peers. Oh, that's funny.
You seem better than when I last saw you.
Yeah, because when you last saw me, I was having my little methoxetamine misadventure. Oh my God, that was epic. Okay, now you're all gonna have to sign a release liability. So if you fall in a hole or something happens to you guys, you're shit out of luck.
Okay.
This is a cabin we built. We've been living here since Susie's been here since the 70s. We built this in the 80s. But yeah, make yourself home. Susie will show you around. It's very funky and very primitive.
Yeah. Hey, Steven, that key you found, was it under one of those boxes?
Oh, wait a minute. The key I found. No, it was in front of the refrigerator. What kind of key?
You didn't tell me. You just said the after. Are you Hamilton?
I'm Hamilton, yeah.
You've changed a little bit.
Really?
I recognize you the first time you
he's
came.
4 years older. That was last time he saw him was in 2013.
Well, I knew you were all wild.
Yeah, that's what I do, is fuck
it?
myself up and ruin people's lives around me. That's my hobby. And don't ask me what my job is. I still haven't figured it out.
Knowledge Chemical, there when I first met you in 1984, you were like the most up-and-coming chemist in their house.
Oh, not at all. I was just one of many.
They had an article on you, so
they had articles about 10
people.
people.
You were the most promising chemist that they were looking at.
You're very modest, Steve. It's true.
Yeah, but that's bullshit.
He's good at knowing, like, he was kind of like a good guy, like in a Mad Max world. I've seen, like, we had 200 deadheads after a dead show at Berkeley Pier, and he was throwing phosphorus and sodium and potassium
Green
in the water.
fluorescent, you know, fluorescent is that dye marker stuff that you've probably seen it in movies and stuff. You put it in water and it almost looks like it's glowing, but it's just, and you put a black light over it, it's just like brilliant green.
He had, like, pockets full of psychedelics that were still sort of quasi-legal, and he had them typed up, not for human consumption.
Oh, yeah, we had some 2CT.
And the cops gave him, he, like, basically goes, these aren't the droids you're looking for.
Well, I just stepped right up and acknowledged. I said, I'm sorry, officer, I'm in the wrong. And he said, well, what's that in your pocket? And I pulled out this little vial. It had some 2CB in it or something. And I just, well, it's an experimental biochemical. And he just kind of looked at it and said, okay.
The cops gave him back the psychedelics, and he was pretty good. I was like, uh-oh.
That was fun, stuff like that. We had some fun adventures.
This is the lab?
Yeah, it was years ago.
You couldn't get in last time I was
Yeah,
here.
well, that's because they had it locked, and I didn't want to break the lock, and I was being super impatient, but so...
This is where it all happened.
Yeah, but this is what's left. It's a melting point apparatus, magnetic stirrers. This used to be full of ground glassware, like, you know, oops, watch me break it. It's beautiful, you know, beautiful stuff. And I remember in 6th grade, they required us to learn a couple of elements, and we were just supposed to learn what they were. But I misunderstood them and took them to say that they wanted us to memorize the atomic symbols for all those. I was already so interested that it was just like I was a sponge. And at that point, of course, you know, ended up with a chemistry set. Want to see something really funny?
Wow.
That's calcium metal. Metallic calcium, and of course it's formed calcium oxide on the outside. This is a metal that's similar to magnesium, except it burns red. So if you were to take a welding torch to that, once you got that going, you know, it'd be pretty spectacular.
Can we do it now?
Are you kidding me? In this day and age, for you to buy stuff like this, in Arizona, mere possession of ground glassware is a felony if you're not a licensed chemist or you're working with some company. Believe it or not, when I was a kid and when I was into this stuff, you could walk into a Rexall drugstore and they had, you'd ask for it in the back, they had bottles of ether, bottles of chloroform, bottles of nitric acid, acetic anhydride, if you can believe that. This is in the Rexall in Mill Valley, I kid you not. They literally have a miner, would call them up, make an order, send them a postal money order, and I was getting aniline, nitric acid, they had everything. But yeah, in those days it was wide open. And, but you know, think about it, the Controlled Substances Act wasn't even passed until 1970. So before that time, it was perfectly legal to even have a lot of the things that we take, you know, like today are like, oh my God.
Have you done any chemistry since you were arrested?
No, I don't have, you know, the facilities or, these days almost all chemistry is done in China or India.
Just like the research chemical market?
Yeah, just like everything.
As the government began to restrict chemicals and scientific equipment, curious adolescents and clandestine chemists alike faced new obstacles in pursuing their interests. The manufacture of psychedelics moved to China, where controlled substances are replaced by uncontrolled derivatives that are sold without restriction to consumers in the United States. The result has been the distribution of hundreds of new drugs and the loss of a culture of citizen science that once thrived in America.
Wow. It's amazing. When you look at pictures of yourself from like 20 years ago or 30 years ago or whatever, it's really weird. There's a picture of Liquid Light Labs. That was the chemical company that a friend of mine and I had after 1980 to about 1984. Yeah, all sorts of things going on there. We focused mostly on chemiluminescence. And this is just notes from different, you know, reactions that I would try. So that was an actual business license, resale number. And then I'd go home from doing this and then had an MDMA lab, and, you know, not that far from the campus. At the end right there.
Where'd my pen still go? They took it? Ah, damn it. Oh, they took my pesto. Oh, I'm gonna kill him. Oh yeah, we're gonna have dinosaur kale for dinner. Do you guys, does anybody here not mind kale? Oh, I knew about our bust 5 years ahead of time, 3 weeks.
Yep.
I can get answers from trees and plants. And the night before I came home, they said, hey, we're getting busted in the morning
No,
today.
my attitude was, you know, somebody's got to take the hit because...
You said somebody has to go down with a ship.
Basic situation, you take responsibility. It's not, Susie has nothing to do with it. She didn't even know about the things that were down there.
Oh, come on.
And they knew it was bullshit, but it worked. For whatever reason, we were able to do that, and that's why I stayed.
Because I've homesteaded.
If we had
this
both
place.
took off and we've both been caught together, like in a high-speed chase or something, who knows what would have happened?
No. I was gonna get us out of here before it happened.
That's the point, Susie. You can't run from, you know, are you gonna run for the rest of your life? You can't. We didn't have enough money to do that.
We did.
You know, oh, well, we got busted, and that was the end of life as we knew it. And here we are. Here we are, stuck in this fucking ghetto. I'm not a pot grower. I don't enjoy it.
So it might be hard to talk about, but can you tell me in as much detail as possible what happened on the day of the bust?
Oh, boy. Make a long story short, there was an informant. They went around the buildings. They obviously probably smelled ether or something. Something made them suspicious. But I got in my truck and followed them down the hill because I didn't know what was going on. You know, I was like, why were these guys, were they rip out? You know, I better go check. And by the time I got down where I couldn't turn around, I saw it was a sheriff's. You know, I identified myself. I said, yeah, we found that 50 pounds of methylamine down on your property there. What I did was I said, okay, well, let's go up there and look at it. I want to see it. And I said, okay. And then I hopped in my truck and we zoomed off. We zoomed by. I kept going, and you know, they put the siren on. It was like a low speed, you know, high speed chase. Bus.
So you tried to escape.
Yeah. And I went up and ran off the road right around the corner here and went down and tried to hide behind the trees, but they found me and the guy jumped out with his gun, and then the other cars started with the DOJ guys pulled up, and then there's, you know, 10 guys with guns pointed at you and you better, you know. We did good. It was a good run, you know. I started when I was 19 and I avoided any kind of serious law enforcement stuff until I was 47. That's a good run by any definition, I think.
Despite concerted efforts on the part of the government to prevent domestic MDMA synthesis, market demand and chemical ingenuity allow amazing synthetic feats to be accomplished under less than ideal conditions. I met a supplier and a chemist who offered to allow me to bear witness to their synthesis of MDMA.
This entire setup, even though it is still kind of tiny, we started micro scale because I had lost my job, had no money whatsoever. So we were just trying out the route, smallest bits as we could at a time, and then working it up. There's been a lot of experimentation with the different routes and also just sourcing the over-the-counter chemicals.
When people see this, there's going to be a lot of people who are angry and will say, you shouldn't show that, you're exposing something that the public shouldn't know about. So why are you taking the enormous risk of showing me this?
Basically, I just wanted to be honest because I don't want to hide anything. You know, I want them to see the service that we were providing from start to finish, and I think that's something that the world finally needs to see. So even though this is dangerous and I could end up in prison, I feel like it's my duty to try and change people's minds.
What kind of music do you like to listen to while you're cooking?
Rachmaninoff.
American sassafras albendum oil is distilled under vacuum to isolate safrole from other phenylpropenes and terpenoids.
Potassium hydroxide, that's the catalyst.
Potassium hydroxide is added to 6.3 molar equivalents of safrole and heated under vacuum to drive off water.
This is when the magic starts to happen, and it'll suddenly turn blue and then brown then black.
Hydroxide ions abstract the benzylic proton, isomerizing the safrole to the thermodynamically favorable internal alkene isosafrole.
It foams up a lot.
The crude isosafrole is distilled under vacuum.
Here's your gorgeous Schedule 1 precursor, isosafrole.
Formic acid is dissolved in 3 molar equivalents of 35% hydrogen peroxide and stirred in an ice bath for an hour to produce performic acid.
Kicking that ice's ass.
The distilled isosafrole is dissolved in sodium bicarbonate buffered, DCM.
Probably my most enjoyable thing doing in the lab is the swirling of the flask.
The most wizardly.
And placed in a salted ice bath. An approximate 4.5 molar excess of crude performic acid is poured down a Liebig condenser over a period of 15 minutes with vigorous magnetic stirring, resulting in the evolution of carbon dioxide gas and a yellow color change.
What's really interesting about this particular operation is that all of the materials are acquired from hardware stores or other inconspicuous non-scientific supply sources, and the result is very impressive.
I interviewed a MDMA chemist, and he buys everything over the counter.
Right.
It's an extremely tedious process.
No.
Yeah, he starts from sassafras, rhubarb,
More power
essential
to
oil,
him, you know. Right,
distills the saffrole.
Yeah. Where's he getting his solvents, you know?
All hardware store.
Okay, so he's doing it in microscopic quantities. He's not making kilograms.
Slowly he is.
This is work that most chemists would never put up with. This is really a feat of patience, of ingenuity, of a lot being made with very little, and I admire that.
There's something adventurous and exciting about making chemical love out of things you can get off a hardware store.
Is there any similarity between elk hunting and hunting for clandestine chemists?
There's a lot of similarities. There really is. I think the adrenaline's very similar. You get to see your target, and you got to sneak up on it and use all the skills at your disposal and all your training and all your knowledge, and hopefully in the end it turns into a big elk. Narcotics was my passion, absolutely. I loved being an undercover narcotics officer. It was the best thing I've ever done in my life. Kind of an outdoors guy. Big elk or a big bust, one or the other.
In June 2000, Adam took part in the largest clandestine lab bust in Arizona history when he arrested 5 NAU chemistry students who synthesized large quantities of MDMA in a house off Route 66.
What is this place?
Well, from what I understand, it's type of a salvage yard, but there was a rental property right here.
Who discovered this location?
Oh, hours of surveillance. Hours of surveillance and just good old-fashioned police work.
This is it.
This is it. Hey, pup. Come here. Come here. There you go. Nice dog. How you doing? He woulda?
Well,
My guess is we're not welcome here.
okay.
Probably
all right.
just like we weren't then.
Okay.
What are you filming?
It's a documentary about something that happened in the house that you live in.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. It used to be an MDMA lab. Well, thank you. Have you ever detected another MDMA lab?
No, this was the only one, and to my knowledge, it was the largest in the nation at that date and time.
And do you think these were bad people?
You know, that's a subjective question, and it's a hard one to ask. I think everybody does things in their life that someday they can walk away from and regret. Obviously, some incredibly smart young men. It would have been nice if we could have focused their energy into doing something more beneficial to society than what they had done, I guess.
They may have thought that they were benefiting society.
Maybe. From everything that I've learned over the years is studies are showing it's detrimental.
Not always. It's in phase 3 clinical trials as a therapeutic drug now, MDMA.
Great.
Yeah.
Science is always changing, but that age, having all that power, I could see where it'd get away from you. Having that knowledge base, how to make something that's so lucrative out on the streets.
Yeah. That's very powerful knowledge.
Yeah.
When you were a young officer, you were taught that, you know, certain drugs were the stepping stone to the worst drugs, and, you know, you believed what you were taught. We used to risk our lives for a joint, and it's legal now, and it's almost unnecessary what we did, you know.
Randy Weems worked with Adam Hicks in the Flagstaff lab bust, which started with the interception of precursor chemicals from a company owned by one of the most important MDMA chemists in history, a man named Strike. Unlike many other chemists, Strike wasn't known for his synthesis, but rather his use of scientific information to subvert a prohibitionist government.
He was different as he had his own chemical company, you know, the Silence Alliance in Texas, and he was shipping out all kinds of chemicals, but then at the same time he was on the internet telling everybody how to do it, how not to get caught, recommending his own company. You know, not a lot of people knew a lot about the internet, and not a lot of people knew how to monitor it. It kind of was a blast out there for everybody just to get their hands on.
Through the publication of books, the supply of precursor chemicals, and most importantly, the founding of a synthesis forum called The Hive, Strike launched a counterattack against the war on drugs by arming hundreds of chemists with the knowledge and materials necessary to make their own MDMA.
I had the opportunity to talk with Strike about his motivations. He was one of these people that truly believed in MDMA, truly believed that it was making his life and the lives of the people around him better. He wanted to do everything that he could to stop prohibition, to stop the war on drugs, to make such a mess that it could never be cleaned up. By starting The Hive, by publishing the books, by creating this network of resources for people that wanted to manufacture MDMA.
Is he back in Texas? Arizona?
So...
Through his connection to the Flagstaff lab, Strike was brought down, but his contributions still resonate in the world of clandestine drug synthesis.
Strike is an interesting individual. He inspired an entire generation with his website. So scientific and yet so focused on clandestine chemistry and the spreading of knowledge.
A crude mixture of aqueous acids and oxidation products, primarily consisting of the isosafryl epoxide, the isosafryl glycol, and the glycol's monoformate ester, is transferred into a SEP funnel, and an emulsion is broken with a vibrating dilding apparatus.
So if I'm just the right spot.
The mixed isosafryl oxidation products are dissolved in methanol, heated to 70 degrees Celsius, and treated with an approximate 3.8 molar excess of 15% hydrochloric acid, which hydrolyzes the isosafryl glycol monoformate ester, opens the isosafryl epoxide, and initiates a pinacol rearrangement on the resulting isosafryl glycol. After 2 hours, brown droplets of MdP2P oil begin to rise and fall from the surface of the reaction mixture in a convection current. The crude MdP2P oil is purified by a vacuum distillation. Sheets of aluminum foil are run through a paper shredder, followed by a food processor.
The finer it is, the faster it reacts with mercury, forming the amalgam.
The finely ground aluminum is placed in a 5-gallon HDPE bucket and suspended in methanol with an overhead stirrer improvised from a power drill. Mercuric chloride is dissolved in methanol and introduced to the suspension to amalgamate the aluminum.
Super careful with this one. I recently had my blood tested for mercury. I work with it so much, absolutely none in it.
That's great.
I have arsenic poisoning though. I don't know where that came from.
Nitromethane is added to the stirring amalgam, followed by MdP2P. The nitromethane is reduced, producing methylamine in situ, which condenses with the ketone, forming an imine that's reduced again.
This is all ice right now, but as this thing heats up, it's gonna melt it. It's getting very intense. Yeehaw.
Oh, that's warm, all right. Wow.
The reduction mixture is treated with aqueous sodium hydroxide to liberate the MDMA freebase.
And the result is this.
The freebase product is extracted 3 times with xylene.
So that is going to have to sit for just a few minutes while it separates. You have to extract it 3 times, wash it 3 times with hydroxide, then wash it 3 times with distilled water. Each time you repeat this, it gets cleaner and cleaner. perfectly clear and gorgeous.
I'm in Northern California at the lab of Steve Gill. He was one of the most prolific clandestine chemists in history and made such a large variety of different compounds that his work rivals many academic or industrial chemists. It's hard to name a single psychoactive drug that he did not synthesize. And who knows what he would have done if he hadn't been arrested.
A simple job. This is just the epitome of this place. A simple job. 30-second job. This is going to take fucking half an hour, 45 minutes to do.
What was the motivation? Was it profit, curiosity?
Oh, God, when I was 19, I was excited about doing it. You know, I didn't even think about making money at it. But I mean, it costs money to do.
Is there a reason you chose not to pursue this academically?
If I had seen an academic, you know, route, by the time I was, you know, in 71, I was, you know, at 72, I was already doing this thing. But it was too late. I tasted the forbidden fruit. You know, it was just too fun to be able to do it myself and not have anybody tell me what to do. Had a couple of problems at school. I dropped out of college a couple of times, and that made it seem less likely that I'd be accepted in an academic setting. You know? Yeah, sometimes I wonder if, you know, my life would have been very different if I had done that.
You can't quit publishing because the work that you do might be used in an inappropriate manner. I was surprised to find that a lot of the information that I published was used by drug people, but there's legitimate scientists out there that want to know this information, and the contribution you can make might help them in their research.
In Terry Delcassen's 42 years at the Drug Enforcement Administration, he synthesized a diverse array of controlled substances to better understand the techniques of a clandestine chemist. But the work he published was so thorough that the clandestine chemists he was trying to stop began to employ his procedures, leading Strike to call Delcassen the godfather of all clandestine ecstasy chemistry.
Afternoon. Can I get you something to drink today?
Do you have Pepsi?
I have a RC Cola.
Oh, my favorite.
Okay.
Yep,
and for
I'd
you?
like that.
Could I have black tea?
Black tea? Take care of that.
Thank you.
Okay. Agents typically don't have scientific backgrounds. They're hired to be law enforcement people. And that's why when there's a clandestine lab, a chemist always goes along with them. And I had the opportunity to work with a lot of really, really good people. As time went on, I got to be more interested in MDA, MDMA. I was actually friends with Dr. Alexander Shulgin. He was always very gracious, really smart guy. It was a pleasure to have known him.
He did work that was not entirely different from the work that was being done at a lot of the labs that the DEA busts. In fact, his lab was raided by the DEA.
Yes. It was like the Wild West when I started off. You had a lot of latitude, and now things have become pretty regimented. Dr. Shulgin actually is considered a friend of DEA up until the publication of PCAL and then subsequently TCAL, where it was perceived that he was promoting drug use rather than trying to stop it. They told me I couldn't have any contact with him in the future. That cut off a good source of information for me, because it was never a case of that. Dr. Shulgin was always straight up and down the line with me. He was always a gracious host. It was a real pleasure to have known the gentleman.
And I've known other people, some were clandestine chemists who did work that was not entirely different from Shulgin's work, yet these are people that end up in prison for the work they do. Do you think that there's something wrong with that?
Well, unfortunately for the clandestine chemists, they didn't have the authority to make the drugs that I had. Who knows if things had been different for me? I could have been a druggie. Could have hooked up with the wrong group of people and ended up doing 15, 20, 25 years in jail for synthesizing illegal drugs just because I liked synthesis.
For people that have never met you, that don't know you, that don't know about Alexander Shulgin, it's hard to communicate why your work was so interesting, because you weren't just studying the labs, you've also performed these syntheses yourself.
That was the greatest part of my career, because I just loved going and doing drug synthesis.
Could you tell me about some of the drugs that you synthesized?
I don't know. I'd have to just go down the list.
Just give me the overview. Tell me.
The MDA compounds.
MDA, MDMA, MMDA, MMDA2.
2C compounds.
2CB, 2CE, 2CD, DOM, DOM.
Made a number of tryptamines, dimethyl,
DMT, DET, DIPT.
Dipropyl and diisopropyl tryptamine.
Aminorex itself, methamphetamine itself.
Methamphetamine is very easy to make.
All the thiodes starting with 2CT, 2CT2, 2CT7, 2CT21.
Methaqualone and mecloqualone.
Could go, oh, the Aleph, of course, I made several of the Aleph series.
Spencyclidine was hot.
PCP.
Oh, yeah, of course. Oh, and then I also made a couple of aminorex analogs. I made the methanedoxyaminorex. I was like the first person to do that. I did that back in the 90s.
In the course of researching and reading about these things, did you ever feel as if you should try them yourself?
Probably not.
2CB, gosh, there was a couple times where Susie and I ate 100, 150 milligrams, you know.
I just never had any desire.
You know, we're driving down some dirt road in the desert and we're both melting down.
Just give me a good candy bar and I'll be happy. Twix if I have my choice.
When both doors pop out, we both like roll onto the ground and we're like, oh my God.
Now, Justin, between you and me, have you illicitly made any drugs?
It was a big risk allowing him to live on your property and do the sort of research that he was doing and to work with him in that area.
I don't like deterring people in their interests, you know. So I just kept going because he didn't want to stop and he didn't want to move. So I just said, okay, brace yourselves.
And how did you take the trial and prison sentence?
Well, I thought we did okay. They could have gave us both 20 to life. It put us on a map in another way that I don't like. We were kind of quiet mom and pa. Luckily, we don't have children. That was a good reason not to have children. I didn't want them to see their parents go through the inevitable. Yeah, well, Steven, now my phone's not working at all. It says I need a SIM card now.
Oh my God. See, we're the only people that you lend your phone to.
Well,
so you're gonna have to pick
one.
one.
The phone slid back up.
Why are you telling me this?
Matt and,
no, it's not
RJ.
between me. I don't text.
You know, it'd be nice if you would do something.
Yeah, it would be, but I'm not going to. I'm done
You're pretty
here.
much,
I'm done
I know,
here.
but you're living off me then. You're letting me do everything.
Did the two of you have these sorts of arguments before the arrest?
No, we didn't argue at all.
Yeah, but we didn't have any worries. You get mad, you know, you can go to your sister's. The difference is money, though. We had at that point, you know, we didn't have to worry about money.
I didn't need that either. I mean, I can live on nothing.
Oh, well, me too, and that's what I'm doing now. I'm living on, I don't spend any money.
That's because I'm very resourceful.
Well,
you came back, your lab is in ruins.
Yeah.
The life that you lived is gone.
But what happens, though, is when you go to prison, the only way you can adapt is say, this is my life. And that was my life. And so when I got out, the halfway house was my life. Basically, between the halfway house, drug testing, talking to your probation officer, doing all that stuff, 6 years have gone by. So when I finally, you know, it's like, okay, well, maybe, you know, let's see what's going on up here. You know, it's like a whole different world. Of course, then you're looking around and saying, well, it's really neat, you know, that everything's still here, but it's too bad that we couldn't go back the way it was.
Gun extracting and washing, this is what we use in order to make sure that we don't lose product and it precipitates out with no trouble whatsoever.
The pooled organic layers are dried with anhydrous magnesium sulfate. Hydrogen chloride gas is generated by dripping hydrochloric acid over sulfuric acid. The hydrogen chloride is bubbled into the xylene solution of MDMA freebase, and crystals of the hydrochloride salt precipitate out of solution.
Yep, there it goes. It was so exciting.
How would you communicate why people do this?
Maybe it's like cooking, you know? Maybe you could say, You know, a lot of people can relate to being a chef. Knowing the ingredients in a kitchen, being able to walk into a spice store and know exactly, oh, this particular nutmeg comes from this particular, and it's super special. And you know those ingredients, and you have the creative thing. You know, it's fun. It's like, you know, especially if it works.
Home chemistry is fun. Whether you're creating drugs or pyrotechnics, just go ahead and try some sort of simple synthesis that gives you a little kick. You know, whether you get high off it or not, just enjoy chemistry because it's a beautiful, beautiful art.
The MDMA hydrochloride slurry is poured into an improvised Buchner funnel and dried under vacuum. Then washed with chilled anhydrous acetone from a spray bottle. The hydrochloride salt is dissolved in heated isopropanol to form a saturated solution, then allowed to crystallize overnight. Finally, residual isopropanol is stripped under vacuum. And voila.
That is the product.
Purified crystal MDMA hydrochloride.
That's my goal. I just want to spread love.
Base in there. See what happens. Just for the hell of it.
Ah, it's working.
Well, that's base catalyzed then. Okay.
Wow.
But that's all you're gonna get. That's it. That's nothing. Where's that room?
That's pretty good. You're
out?
tough to please.
You're damn right I am. I'm used to things putting out, you know, with 50% quantum yield, which means 50% of the chemical energy turns into light. This is nothing. Oh, we're gonna try throwing some rubrine in there to get some red.
There's 2 vials of it.
Great. I synthesized this myself. That was one of my things I was kind of proud of.
Do you have a scale in here?
Nope. All that stuff is gone.
They took your scale?
Oh, yeah.
So you really haven't done any chemistry since your arrest?
No. No, I haven't.
Would you go back if you could?
Sure. Why not? You mean if we didn't get busted, would I have kept doing it? Yeah. Hell yeah. Yeah, it was fun. Put it this way, you know, you're successful if you get away with it. You know, if I got to play secret agent man to get one gallon of ether, you know, forget it. You know, it's just not worth it. You know, it's like, it's a different world now. You know, it's my era is over. It's done.
The end of the golden age of clandestine synthesis.
Perhaps, yeah. And maybe that's a good thing.
I'm glad Steve is willing to talk about all of this with me, because he goes through bouts of depression surrounding this entire trajectory of his life where he doesn't want to talk about any of it. He's ashamed, he's embarrassed at how things turned out.
Another failure. Okay, well, that's science in action. That's how it works. You try things, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't.
We could look for a protocol if you want.
But oh, look at the list here. This is ridiculous. 10 milliliters of potassium hydro, 3
molar.
Okay, so it's in water.
I don't know if there's anything to be learned from it. You could say it's a cautionary tale, but he never did anything wrong to begin with.
See what happens.
Nothing he did had any negative impact on society. The only bad thing was him being arrested. That's a true crime. If anything, he's an example of how to live. And yet his life was destroyed. And then on top of that, all the measures that have been taken to prevent clandestine synthesis in the United States have only prevented young people from becoming interested in chemistry. If you don't have practical experience playing around in a lab, you'll never be interested in chemistry. And chemistry is a beautiful thing that actually makes the world a better place.
That's kind of pretty. That's trippy. You've got solids that are glowing in there. It's fascinating. Look at that. Whoa. That's pretty fucking cool.